Hello. In this video, I will be giving my process for making Jugg edits on Davinci Resolve. I'll be breaking down each step in my process and my methodology as I do each thing. Just a little disclaimer before I start. This is not a beginner tutorial for Davinci Resolve. If you want a beginner tutorial, I highly recommend watching Plax's Davinci Resolve Basic tutorials and Clout VFX's Ambi Basics tutorials, and they will explain the basics a lot better than I ever could. And the same principles that they mention in their videos will apply here. The first thing we're going to do is set up our new project. So in our new project, we're going to make two bins, one for your timelines and one for your clips. In the timelines bin, you're going to create two timelines by right-clicking here, create new timeline, one at normal settings, and then one at the settings that I use. So you're going to want to unclick Use Project Settings, go to Format, and then change the aspect ratio to 1440 by 1080, and then change the timeline frame rate to 18 frames per second. And once we're done with that, we'll get to preparing our clips. On our first timeline, we're going to go and drag our clips in. Quick note about clip selection: you really want to think about your whole edit as you're choosing your clips. You want to think about the time remap and the movement and stuff like that as you're choosing your clips, because it'll be kind of hard to go back and add more clips later if you don't already have them. And then we're going to start by cutting the dead frames of all of our clips. So we're going to look through each clip that you have, and you're going to cut on the frame that the actual movement changes. So I'll give an example. Character is still for these first 3 frames. I'm using the right arrow key to move through each frame. Now on this frame it moves, so I'm going to cut right there, and I'll keep doing that for each clip that I have. Once you're done cutting all the dead frames, you're going to highlight all of the clips. Press Ctrl D on frames and set the duration to 1 frame. Then you can go to Edit and click on Delete Gaps to push them all together. And it should look something like this. After that, you'll highlight them all again. Right click, make a new compound clip. Right click, click Render in Place. Make sure you click Render at Source Resolution, and then click Render. And you're going to want this to go to an accessible folder, because you're going to need to get this later. Once our clips are rendered, normally what I do is I use topaz and flow frames to increase the FPS and quality. They're not mandatory, but they do help a lot. On flow frames, I like doing 300 FPS, and you want to make sure you do H.265 and VEC. And wait for this to interpolate. Alright, once that's done, we're going to go into Topaz. These are the settings I use. This is copied from Clout VFX, so I'm not sure if they're the best settings, but they are the ones that I use. And you just click Export As. It's nice to name it, and then you wait for that to be done. Once we have our upscaled and full frame clip, it's time to go into our other timeline and actually start making the actual edits. The next thing that you're going to want to do is line up fusion compositions on your timeline where you actually want your clips to be. And for a Jugg edit, that's normally like on the beat of the actual song. And a good practice that I do is using M on your keyboard to place markers, just so you don't lose the spot and that everything is like a uniform length. Alright, once we've done that, and we're just going to grab fusion compositions from your effects and then line them up. Make sure to grab the back and not the front of your fusion composition, and then line those up to where the beats of the song are. Once we've done that, I'm going to go over what I would do for every fusion composition. So everything in this timeline is going to basically have the same thing done to it. The first thing we're going to do is time remap, and I'll show you how I set up each fusion composition. So we're going to go into Fusion. In our nodes, we're going to grab a background node, grab this gray box and put it into the media out. In our media pool, grab your clips, grab the gray box and put that into your background node. Since the upscale is at 4K and the actual timeline is at 1080p, I just have to change the size on this merge. Now we'll go into the actual time remap. On your media in 1, you're going to want to click Control Space, use OF for optical flow, and then type in TST for time stretcher. You want to make sure you're on the first frame and that there's a keyframe on the first frame, and that source time is going to be the beginning of your clip. Because your clips are all in one long video, you're just going to look with this. So if I want this first scene, then I'll do this, or if I want the next scene, I'll have to go past all of this to the next one. So if I want it to start on this scene, then I'm going to have to choose the source time that is at the start of this scene. It won't be 0 every single time, but for this one, it is. Then we'll go to the end and we'll set the source time to where we want the actual clip to end. Then you want to make sure you click flow and then check all of these boxes, and then we'll go on to our time remap graph. Now, most of the time, there are 3 graphs that I might end up using. First one is very simple. It's just a very stiff graph like this, which will kind of just have a jump up at the start and then slow down. So you kind of see that. And you can also just change these values, so you can make it a little bit softer if you need. This is kind of a base time remap graph that I might try out before anything else. The next one would be starting off a little bit slower and then jumping up. So something like this. And the last one I might do would be something like this. So if I want a little bit of movement at the end and I want it to kind of stick in the middle, this will kind of do that. But it's very important that you don't copy my graphs exactly and that you mess around with your graphs, because it's the most important part of your time remap. Because even if your clip selection's good and it's perfect FPS and everything else, if your graph is not good, the clip is not going to look good time remap. So I'm going to do time remapping for everything else in this edit, and then we'll come back for the shakes and the movement. So I did the time remap and it looks something like this. Just some notes for things to avoid when you're doing your time remap. You don't want your time remap to look super duper stiff. There's a lot of points in this where it kind of does, so you don't want it to just have one movement and then just kind of stay. It's not the worst thing ever if that's kind of what you're going for, but you do want to look for it not to be super duper stiff. Another thing is you obviously want to avoid having your video warp at all, so that's just something that you're gonna have to mess with graphs and try to get it to not work. The next thing that we're going to do is the shakes. So this again is going to be for every single clip, but I'm just going to do it on one and then I'll show what it looks like at the end, but I'll just go over my thought process for each shake. It's very good to not copy your shakes per video clip. It will look a lot better if you make the shake specifically for the transition and whatever you're trying to do. So I'll go over this first clip and what shakes I would do on it. You want to put your shakes right after your time stretcher before your merge. And the shakes that I use is F dissolve shake. And just saying this right now, for any effects that are not in normal Davinci Resolve that I use in this video, they are available in the Clout VFX Discord server in his Fusion Effects pack, which you can download for free if you join his server. I highly recommend it. This shake is amazing, and he has a lot of other really good free effects in there. Highly recommend that you go and download that, but that's where I'm getting any of the effects that are not on Davinci Resolve. So normally to start out with the shake, I'll keyframe on the first frame, and on the last frame, I'll set it to 0. On the first frame, normally I go between 1.5 and 3. Normally I like to go about 2.5, and I like to set the dissolve speed up. Then basically what you're going to do is you're going to mess with mostly the amplitude frequency sliders here, and then all of these values down here. Plax just recently did a shake tutorial, so if you want a more in-depth tutorial on this shake, or just shakes in general, I'd recommend watching that first before you just mess around with these values. But this is what I normally do, and you're not going to copy exactly what I'm doing here, but this is just kind of my ideas of what I do. This one just kind of needs to be basic because there's not really a transition because this is the first clip. I normally use a graph like this. The only other graph I would use for my shakes would look something like this. Kind of a stiffer graph, but I like doing this. And then normally I will add a little bit of tilt. So that's just a pretty basic shake. And here's what it looks like. And for every clip, you're going to want a pre-shake and a post-shake. So a shake at the beginning of the clip and at the end. So for the post-shake, I like to keyframe it a little bit further in at 0. So normally like maybe a third of the way through the clip, and then right at the end at the same kind of 1.5 to 3. And I'm basically using the same type of graph, and let's see how that looks. So this is how that looks. It's a little bit harder to notice because the second clip here doesn't have a transition. So I'll do this first shake just to show what that would look like. So this is what the shakes look like on these first two clips. Now if you're noticing that it looks a little stiff, kind of like there's something missing, the main thing that you're missing is scales. You always want your transform or your scale to be after your shakes so that they don't get affected. I like just using the basic transform node for my scales. I think it works good for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is on this first shake, I'm just going to add a little zoom out just to add a little bit more movement. So for the second part, I'm going to need a zoom out scale for this. You don't want to go too crazy with the zoom outs because you don't want to have your motion tiles be visible for most of your edit. You want to make sure that they are kept to a minimum. Then on this second clip, we want to add something that kind of leads into that transition. So because it's zooming in from his face, you can change the pivot point to change where this is going to zoom in from. So we can kind of have that look a little bit better. So that'll look something like this. So for this clip, going into this clip is kind of moving to the right. So I want to do maybe a slide here. So if you want to do a slide, you're going to use a transform, and you're going to keyframe the center part of the transform node. You don't want it to be too long, and you want to keyframe it one before the end, because the last frame you're going to want to be an offset framer, so you don't want to have it keyframed on that frame. And then you basically do the opposite on the second clip. Let's see how that looks. It looks very funky right now, but it'll look better with these offset framers, which I'll get to in the framer section. For example, for these two clips, I do a scale at the end of this clip zooming in, and then slightly zooming out at the start of this clip. Now for this one, I normally just do like a zoom in and then a zoom out, just for like a kind of basic transition because these don't have much correlation. Same thing for these two clips. Or have this one zoom in and then this one zoom out. So you just want to be thinking about that with your scales and your shape. The next thing that we're going to do is our framers. So for my framers, I like to just add an adjustment clip that is the size of the clip, and then in that adjustment clip you're basically just going to layer your framers to make something. The important thing to remember about one framers is that some of them might be obvious, but a lot of them are just kind of trial and error and looking to see what looks good. Most of the time I like to look for maybe like a flash, kind of just basic stuff that I know will look good kind of no matter what. So I like to do kind of like a dark and a light flash. You use the brightest contrast node for that, and you like to keyframe and adjust these values here. Maybe doing something with a tint, so the Kawa Framer fast tint or something like this. You kind of just want to experiment. This is, I think, the most difficult part of making edits like this, making good one framers that look good, because it is very difficult and it's taken me a while. Then you're going to want to do that also on the start of the next clip. You're going to kind of want it to match it to to a certain extent. But for example, this is an effect I really like, edge detect, and I think it looks really good with this certain song that I'm doing, and I just like how it looks. So you can kind of just experiment with framers. The last very important framer that I want to mention is a offset. Is used in your slide transitions to add a lot more impact and a lot more like movement to the slide. Also finding inspiration in other people's edits and looking for one framers that you like, kind of copying them, or just finding a few that you think look good. And over your whole edit, you don't want your framers to get super repetitive. You don't want to keep using the same types of framers. Even if you're using the same effects for your framers, you kind of want to switch it up. I think that framers are really hard to explain, and I think Cloud VFX has a good tutorial explaining kind of the concept behind framers. But the easiest way to explain it is just to say you need to experiment, you need to look through your effects, you need to just try stuff until it looks good. And it is very frustrating. I understand it. I had a really hard time understanding framers. Even up until now, I'm not the best at it. The last thing I'm going to go over before I'm done is color correction. So you're going to use the color corrector node, like just doing an adjustment clip over the whole edit, and just messing with a lot of values until you get something that looks good. Everything that you need is in this color correction tab. Even just something like this, just kind of changing the colors a little bit. It's a very simple, in theory, thing that can make your edit look a lot better. There are a lot of tutorials, and those tutorials are mostly going to be the same regardless of what editing software you use, because color correction is just, in theory, the same. So I'd recommend watching a lot smarter people than me about color theory or whatever explain color correction. I just kind of mess around with shit until it works. So I think that goes over the basics of how I make Jugg edits on Davinci Resolve. I'm sorry this took so long to come out. I hope that this at least helps a little bit, or at least just steers you in the right direction. If you're watching this on TikTok, feel free to comment any questions or DM me with any questions. If you're watching this on YouTube, just comment any questions. I will try and be diligent to answer any of them. Feel free to tag me if you end up using this. I'd love to see what people make using this. We're almost at 3K followers, and I'd just like to thank everyone that has supported me throughout my whole editing journey so far, and thank you so much for watching.